So, good evening, my dear children of class 9. So, today I shall be dealing with Merchant of Venice. I shall be starting off from where we had left in the last class. So, in the previous class, what we had seen was we have completed Act 1, Scene 1 as well as Scene 2, where in these first two scenes, we were introduced to the most important characters, the three principal characters, namely Antonio, Bassanio and Portia, where in the first scene we see the first scene taking place in Venice, where we are first introduced to Antonio, Bassanio and other minor characters along with them. And in the second scene, Act 1, Scene 2, we were introduced to Portia and Nerissa, where the principal character is Portia. So now today we shall be dealing with Act 1, Scene 3, and in this scene 3, we are introduced to yet another prime character, the antagonist of this play, the villain of the play, the famous character, that is Shylock. He is yet another principal character of this play, without which this play would remain incomplete. So now let's move ahead with this Act 1, Scene 3. So now let's start. Scene 3, a street in Venice. In front of Shylock's house enter Bassanio and Shylock. So now, as we saw, this is a kind of a continuation of what had happened in the first scene, that is in Act 1, Scene 1, where in Act 1, Scene 1 we see that Antonio and Bassanio, towards the end of that scene, a conversation develops between these two friends, where Bassanio, he puts forward his request for help to Antonio, that he was in need of 3,000 ducats in order to head towards Belmont and win a possible suitor, where he feels that he has a great chance in winning the hand of Portia. So for that he had no money, and so the only person he could go to was Antonio. And since Antonio at that point of time had no ready money at hand, since his entire money he had invested in his various argosies that were sent to different directions of the world, he had no ready money at hand. So he too had no money, and because of that situation, he had suggested Bassanio to look forward, search in and around Venice for loan in his name. So now in this scene, now we already know of that, and so in this scene what we see is Bassanio, after having searched for the loan in and around Venice, finally the last person that he finally comes to is Shylock. And Shylock, he is indeed a very rich merchant, so a usurer, a money lender, so this scene is basically revolves around the conversation between Bassanio and Shylock, where Bassanio is asking for loan. All right, so now let's move ahead. So Shylock, 3,000 ducats. Well, 3,000 for 3 months. So here we are already introduced to Shylock, and we already know that the minute he says 3,000 ducats, we are already aware that Shylock has already been offered this request by Bassanio of 3,000 ducats, that too for 3 months. So we get that idea clearly. So Bassanio, "Aye, sir, for 3 months. Yes, sir, for 3 months. Shylock, for 3 months. Well, so Shylock keeps repeating, he's contemplating, he's thinking about, that Bassanio has come forward to ask for loan, that to 3,000 ducats, which was not a very small sum. All right, it was a great deal, and he wanted that for 3 months. Yes, Bassanio, for which, as I told you, Antonio shall be bound. Antonio shall stand as the security," he says. He further informs Shylock. And Shylock, Antonio shall become bound well. So he keeps repeating whatever Bassanio says. He repeats the same thing, not adding a word or two any further than that. And here what we see is that Shylock is in a very contemplative mood, because after all, it was matter of money. And he too was a person in business. He was a usurer. So he knew that, though Antonio was a rich merchant, but yet Shylock, being a very prudent usurer, he did not want to risk giving him money, because he already knew of the fact that Antonio's entire money had been invested in his various ships, and he did not have ready money at hand, and there was huge possibility that he might not be able to return back the 3,000 ducats that if in case Shylock loans him. So he is in a very contemplative mood. Then Bassanio says, "May you steed me, will you pleasure me? Shall know your answer. May you steed me, will you help me?" Bassanio is asking him, will you pleasure me? Will you oblige me? Will you, do me the favor of giving me this 3,000 ducats that I'm requesting you? Please, may I know your answer? Because till then, as I told you, that Shylock was in a very contemplative mood, and he hadn't given forth his answer. So he had not given his response. He had not given his answer. So Shylock, he says, 3,000 ducats for 3 months, and Antonio shall bound. Antonio shall stand as a security. So he's still in a very contemplative mood. Then Bassanio, your answer to that? Yes, of course, but I want your answer to that. Then Shylock says, Antonio is a good man. So he's thinking, his thought proceeds further towards Antonio, where he says Antonio is a good man. And Bassanio says, have you heard any imputation to the contrary? Imputation here means allegation. Have you heard anything wrong against him? For you doubt him? Is it because of that you doubt him? Then Shylock says, oh, no. My meaning is saying he is a good man is to have you understand me that he is sufficient. Sufficient here, he means that he refers to Antonio being having sufficient money. Antonio having a very satisfactory security in terms of finance, in terms of money. So Shylock, when he referred to Antonio as a good man, he referred in a way wherein he intended to mean that he was Antonio. He was a man who had satisfactory security in terms of finance, in terms of money. So yet his means are in supposition. So though he has satisfactory security in terms of money, but yet in spite of it, his means are in supposition. Supposition means his means here is it's referred to all his rich argosies, rich ships that were loaded with rich cargoes. So he is referring to that when he refers to his means, Antonio's means are in supposition. Supposition means subject to risk. Though he is rich, though he has a very satisfactory security, but in spite of it, his means, his ships are not free from danger, all right, not free from any form of risks. So he hath an argosy bound. Argosy here is referred to the ship carrying goods. He hath an argosy bound to Tripolis, another to Indies. I understand. Moreover, upon the Rialto, he hath a third at Mexico, a fourth for England, and other ventures he hath squandered abroad. So he says, yes, definitely he is rich, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that his ships are free from risks, and definitely he has many ships. Shylock is saying that recounting that Antonio does definitely, he's a rich merchant after all, and he does have many ships. Out of his many ships, some have headed towards Tripolis, another to Indies, and not only that, he had even heard of the information from Rialto. Rialto is a center where business exchange and transaction used to take place. So, and he also overheard from other business people out there, gathered out there at Rialto, that he had also heard that his ships had headed towards even Mexico, some to England, and others it had squandered abroad. So in all four corners of the world, all his ships had squandered. They had headed towards different directions to do business. But ships are but boards, sailors but men. So what he meant out here is, but in spite of it, his ships are not free from risks. They are subject to risk because ships are naturally, of course, obviously made up of boards, woods, which can easily be destroyed, which is subject to any form, various form of natural destruction. And men and sailors but men, here he meant to say that sailors are mere mortals. They can die anytime, whenever any form of mishaps might occur. So and not just that, there are other forms of dangers too that he considers, that he knows and is aware of, that Antonio's ships might face. So he says, there may be land rats and water rats. There be land rats and water rats, water thieves and land thieves. I mean pirates. And not just that, his ships might be subject to the threat posed by pirates. Then there is the peril of water, winds and rocks. And not just that, there are so many various natural calamities that his ships might succumb to. So these are the various dangers and threats and risks that Antonio's ships might be subjected to. Not just all these things, considering all these things, we see that he is being very careful. He is being very prudent enough before making a decision of agreeing with lending of 3,000 ducats to Bassanio in the name of Antonio. So we see out here, then the man is notwithstanding sufficient. So the man here is referred to Antonio. The man Antonio is sufficiently secure in terms of finance, in terms of money. 3,000 ducats. I think I may take his bond. So 3,000 ducats is what he wants. So I think I may safely accept his bond. So he now starts slowly, although he considers all these and is aware of all these dangers that his ships might be subjected to, but yet there is this change of mind in him that he might be ready to lend him 3,000 ducats, that he may consider this bond. Then Bassanio, be assured, you may rest assured, be assured that you may. So then Shylock says, I will be assured I may, and that I may be assured will be think me, that is, I shall think it over. So I should like to be convinced. He says, I want to be convinced regarding whether to lend money or not. So, and in order to be more convinced, give me some time. I want to rethink it over. So, but before that, may I speak with Antonio? So he wishes to speak with Antonio. Then Bassanio, he says, if it please you to dine with us, yes, you may. Yes, indeed, it is better if you meet him. And for that, would you like to dine with us? Would you like to have dinner with us? Then, yes, then Shylock immediately he rebukes, he says, yes, to smell pork, to eat of the habitation which your prophet the Nazareth conjured the devil into. So, yes, do you think that I'm gonna sit and eat with you people, to eat, to smell the pork, to eat the habitation. Habitation is here referred to the flesh of swine. Do you think that I'm gonna sit and eat with you pork eaters, you who eat that very flesh of that pork, in which the soul of an evil being had been put into by the very figure, by the very holy Nazareth? That is, he's referring to Jesus Christ, So, do you think that I'm gonna eat that animal, sit and eat that animal with you, into which that very animal into which Lord Jesus had, put the evil spirits? So here is, actually what had happened was, there is this story that there was this man who was possessed by an evil spirit, and to set him free from that evil spirit, Jesus Christ, he rescued that man by removing that spirit from that man's body, and inserted that spirit into the body of the swine. So thereafter, this animal swine was regarded as something very, very impure. So he's referring to that instance out here. So yes, let's move forward. I will buy with you, sell with you. Buy with you, sell with you means I shall do business with you, talk with you, walk with you, and so following. I shall do business with you, I shall talk with you, I shall definitely walk with you, and do so forth. But the last thing that I shall ever do with you is sit with you all and eat with you, drink with you, nor will I pray with you, nor will I do these. I will never ever do these things with you. What news on Rialto? Who he comes here? So immediately he switches over and he says, so what news do you bring from Rialto? And as he asks that, he notices somebody at a distance heading towards them. He says, and he inquires, who is he come here? So who is that person? Who is that person approaching? Then that person is none other than Antonio. So enter Antonio. Bassanio, this is Signor Antonio. So Bassanio, he's overjoyed to see Antonio, and Antonio enters right at that scene when Shylock was wanting to meet and have a talk with him before he's finally convinced and is ready to lend them 3,000 ducats. So Bassanio, he moves forward and moves towards approaching Antonio to greet him, while on the other hand, when Shylock is left alone behind, when he is left behind all alone, he aside, that is, this is a monologue, so he talks to himself, he talks aside to the audience. So he says, how like a fawning publican he looks. Here he is referring fawning publican to Antonio. Yes, so fawning is servile. All right, publican here is a tax collector, a Roman tax collector. So this tax collector, these Roman tax collectors, they were hated by people. So he here refers to Antonio as the fawning publican because he hates. And here we get to see for the first time the kind of feeling that Shylock has towards Antonio. He harbors the feeling of hatred towards Antonio, and immediately, instantaneously, the minute he has a sight of him, he immediately refers to him as a fawning publican. How like a fawning publican he looks. I hate him, for he is a Christian, and his hatred towards Antonio is furthered when he in the second line he says that I hate him. I hate him because he's a Christian, but more for that in low simplicity, and I hate him even more because of his low simplicity that he is referring to as his foolishness, Antonio's foolishness. And what foolishness is Shylock referring to of Antonio? He says he lends out money gratis. So the foolishness that he is referring to of Antonio is that Antonio, he hates that foolish habit, foolishness of Antonio, where Antonio lends money without charging any interest. He lends money without any gratis. Gratis here means free of interest, without any interest, and brings down the rate of usance. Usance here means interest. So I request you, my dear children, to, as I am explaining, it is a humble request to all of you to please write down the notes, make small few notes for later references. So he says, then he lends out money gratis and brings down the rate of usance, brings down the rate of interest. Why? How does he bring down the rate of interest? He brings down the rate of interest by charging no interest at all. He lends money but does not charge any interest. So the Jews in the ancient times, they were known as usurers. So they were money lenders, and they used to charge high rate of interest, and that was how they used to earn money. So here he is referring to that very act, and because of that very act of his, of Antonio, of charging no interest at all, the entire rate of interest in and around Venice had to be completely brought down. So that made them suffer a huge amount of loss. So this is one core reason why Antonio was hated by Shylock. Apart from being a Christian, he was hated for being a user who charged no interest at all, who brought down the entire rate of interest, causing a huge amount of loss to the other money lenders like Shylock here. So if I can catch him once upon the hip, so hip here, in the sense he is referring to Antonio at his disadvantage, at his weakness. If at all I can catch him once upon the hip, I'll feed fat the ancient grudge I bear him. So if at all I may be able to catch him at his disadvantage, at his weakest point, then I will fully satisfy my long-standing grievance that he has been carrying against him. So now when he talks about feed fat the ancient grudge, here Shylock, all of a sudden, from a personal and a very subjective grievance, he rises to a very universal and a very general grievance, where he all of a sudden represents not himself, not his own grievance, personal grievance, but the grievances of each and every Jews alive. So here he says, when he says ancient grudge, so he is referring to all the humiliations, the ill treatment, the unequal treatment that not just he experienced and suffered at the hands of the Christians, but also his ancestors. Since time immemorial, they had been suffering at the hands of the Christians, because the Christians, they believed that charging interest, was something that went against their religion. It was more like committing a huge sin. So that's what they detested, and for which they were looked down upon, and they were humiliated, they were ill-treated, and they were quite unpopular amongst the Christian mass. So that picture with that history of the Jews and the Christian existed. So the Jews had been suffering at the hands of the Christians since time immemorial. So That is what he is referring to out here when he says, when he makes a special mention saying that he would wish to feed fat his ancient grudge, his long-standing grudge, I bear him. He hates our sacred nation. Sacred nation here refers to the Jewish nation. And he rails, rails here means he speaks abusively against our race, Jewish race. Even there where merchants most do congregate. Congregate means gather. And not just that, not just does he rail against and criticizes our Jewish sacred nation, but he also humiliates me in front of in front of the entire public, in front of and here he's making special reference to Rialto. He had been at Rialto, he had been publicly humiliated. So on me, my bargains and my well-worn thrift. So he had been humiliated on the ground by Antonio, on the ground where he had been criticized for his money lending business, for him charging high rate of interest. So which he calls interest. Cursed be my tribe if I forgive him. So here we see the intensity of Shylock's hatred towards Antonio. And he says that, if I ever forgive him, let my entire tribe be cursed. So here we see how much he hated Antonio for all the humiliations, for all the losses that he had caused, and him being a Christian, for that is Shylock and his ancestors had since time immemorial suffered at the hands of the Christian. So that is what we see out here. So then here in this scene, what we need to do is Shylock as a character, we see a major side of him as the kind of person he is, the personality that he has, the nature that he carries, and at the same time the nature that he has developed with time because of the kind of environment that existed and he grew into, so we shall discuss that later. So here now what happens is Bassanio touching him, Shylock, do you hear? So as he was talking to himself aside about the kind of hatred, the intense hatred that he carried and harbored against Antonio, he failed to realize that Bassanio had already neared him, and in fact he was calling forth Shylock. So Bassanio touching him, he touches Shylock and tells him, Shylock, do you hear me? Are you hearing? Are you here? Do you hear me? Then Shylock, I am debating of my present store, and by the near guess of my memory, I cannot instantly raise up the gross of full 3,000 ducat. See out here, the minute he realizes that Antonio and Bassanio, especially Bassanio, is there right in front of him, he immediately changes. So till now, what we saw, what we heard is Shylock's hatred towards Antonio. He had been thinking about all those while, the kind of hatred that he had against Antonio. And when Bassanio inquires whether he was hearing him or not, immediately he changes. He says that I'm debating of my present store, which was not exactly what he was doing. So here we see that this man, he's really very cunning. He is very crafty. That is what we see out here. So instead he says, I'm debating. He tells a lie. He says, I'm debating of my present store. So I am debating here means I'm in the sense that I'm calculating of my present store, whether I'll be able of my ready money, present money, whether I have enough that I would which would allow me to lend money to you, 3,000 ducats to you. So I am debating of my present store, and by the near guess of my memory, I cannot instantly raise up the gross, and I feel and as far as I can calculate by my memory alone, I feel that I might not be able to. I cannot at once raise the full sum, that is the 3,000 ducats. I'll not be able to raise it at once, instantaneously. What of that? What of that? In the sense, but that does not matter. Why? Because Tubal, a wealthy Hebrew of my tribe. Tubal here is another Jew, another Hebrew who is a very close associate, a very close friend of Shylock. Yes. So, but don't worry, Tubal, a wealthy friend, a wealthy Hebrew of my tribe will furnish me, will give me, will let me have it. So, but soft here means, but wait. How many months do you desire? For how many months do you want it? Then to Antonio, he says, rest you fair, good Signor, your worship was the last man in our mouth. So, greetings, my good sir. So, he's greeting Antonio, and he greets in a manner as if he was really very happy to see him. But we all this while, we know that he does not like him. He is not happy to see him. But all he carries and all the feelings that he has towards Antonio is that nothing but of hatred. So here we see, rest you fair, good Signor, your worship was the last man in our mouth. So, yes, greetings, my good sir, your honor's name. See how in a respectful manner and a humble manner he is welcoming Antonio. So he's quite a hypocrite. That's what we see out here. So your honor's name, your honor's name was had just been the subject of our talk. We were just talking about you, Antonio. Shylock, albeit means although I neither lend nor borrow by taking nor by giving excess, yet to supply the ripe means the urgent wants of my friend, I'll break a custom. So he says, Shylock, although I neither lend nor borrow money, nor do I take any from another man's spare money, nor give my own, yet in order to meet the immediate needs of my dear friend out here, I am breaking this custom of mine, just to meet his needs, to help him. Then he moves towards Bassanio and says to Bassanio, is he yet possessed? That means, have you told him how much you want? How much ye would? How much you want? Shylock overhears him and he says, aye, yes. 3,000 ducats. 3,000 ducats is what you want, Antonio. And for 3 months, he makes mention that, yes, 3,000 and for 3 months. Then Shylock, I had forgot. Oh, see how he's pretending. I had forgotten. 3 months. Yes, you told me so. Well, then, your bond. And let me consider. But here you, methought you said neither lend nor borrow upon advantage. Advantage means interest. But let me consider whether I'll be able to give you lend you 3,000 ducats or not. But if I did hear you right, didn't you just a while ago tell me that you neither lend nor borrow money upon interest? So here he is trying to have a conversation with Antonio with regard to interest, that he will try to justify his act of interest, charging interest. Shylock will try to justify his act of charging interest, out here by making special biblical reference out here. So then Antonio, I do never use it. Yes, I do never do that. Then Shylock, when Jacob grazed his uncle Laban's sheep, this Jacob from our holy Abraham was as his wise mother wrought in his behalf, the third possessor. Aye, he was the third. So now Shylock out here, he makes a special biblical reference to this prophet Abraham, right? So Abraham as well as Jacob. So Abraham out here is the we should know that Abraham was the father of Jewish patriarch. He was a prophet, all right? And if we go hierarchically, Abraham, he was the father of the Jewish prophet, and after Abraham, his son Isaac, he inherited that position, as a prophet, the second prophet of Jewish patriarch after his father. And Isaac, he had twins, sons, both were sons, twins from his wife Rebecca. So here when he says, so as his wise mother, this Jacob from our holy Abraham, Jacob, he is the third successor of the Jewish patriarch. So Jacob from our holy Abraham was as his wise mother. Wise out here means shrewd mother. Mother here is referred to Rebecca, wife of Isaac. So wrought means schemed in his behalf. So here he is making a biblical reference to how Jacob became the third successor, while in reality, according to tradition, the firstborn is supposed to inherit, to be the successor, to be the possessor and the successor to take forward their father and the forefathers' position. So, and here what happened was, according to the biblical story, Isaac, he was blind, right? He was blind. And as I had already told you, Isaac and his wife Rebecca, the two had twins, namely Esau, that was the firstborn twins, and Jacob. So what happened was, now it was as the tradition went, it was time for Isaac to call forth his firstborn and to entask him with the task in order to succeed, and thereby announcing him as his successor. So what happened? So since that time had already come and it was time for him to proclaim Esau as the successor, what happened one fine night was that Esau was called forward by Isaac, and Isaac asks Esau to cook a savory mutton dish in order to pass that test, and in order to succeed as the next successor, he had to cook a very savory mutton dish for his father, and he had to bring that to him. And after that, he would, if he succeeds, he would be considered as the next successor. So this conversation was eavesdropped by Rebecca. And Rebecca, she had this special favoritism, and she favored and she loved Jacob more, and she wanted Jacob to be the third successor. So what she does is she takes advantage. She overheard the conversation between the father and the son, and since she wanted Jacob to be the third successor, she takes advantage of her husband's blindness, and what she does is she cooks a very wonderful savory dish on behalf of Jacob, and asks him to take that savory dish to his father. And this is how, through this crafty scheme of Rebecca, Jacob succeeds as the third successor of the Jewish patriarch. So here Shylock is referring to this story when he says, as his wise mother of Jacob, wrought in his behalf, schemed in his behalf, and successfully made him the third successor, the third possessor. He was the third. Jacob was the third possessor. And what of him? Did he take interest? And what of Jacob? Are you trying to say that Jacob took interest like you did? So Shylock says, no, not take interest, not as you would say, directly interest. Mark what Jacob did. No, he did not take interest, not as the way you would term it as interest, the way you term it. So mark what Jacob did when Laban and himself were compromised, that all the ewenlings, that is, ewenlings here refers to the newborn lambs. So yes, right, I'm out here. When Laban and himself were compromised, that all the ewenlings which were streaked and pied should fall as Jacob's hire. This was a way to thrive, and he was blessed, and thrift is blessing if men steal it not. So he says that, no, he did not take interest as you would term it. But what happened? What happened was, but mark you in the sense, but mark you. What Jacob did was, there was an agreement between Jacob and Laban. Jacob had gone to he had approached his uncle Laban, searching for some work. So, and the two of them made an agreement that, Jacob would look after his sheep, the sheep of his uncle Laban, and in return, as his wage, Jacob would receive all the newborn lambs that were striped and spotted. Now, where in this world do you find striped and spotted lambs? So basically, Uncle Laban was trying to cheat. All right. So then, striped and spotted should be Jacob's. So all those newborn lambs would be Jacob's share as his payment. So this agreement was made, and Jacob agreed. And what happened was that, that by chance, by dint of luck, all the ewenlings, that were born in the next season, they were all born striped and spotted. And Jacob, he won all those ewenlings because it was born striped and streaked. So that is what he's referring. That is the instance, biblical reference that he's referring to. So then he says, this way to thrive should fall as Jacob's heir. This was a way to thrive, and he was blessed, and Jacob was blessed, and he succeeded. He was blessed in doing so, and all these profit turned to be a blessing. So now he's referring out here to this very active biblical reference he's mentioning out here. He refers to out here. He does it in order to justify, Shylock does so in order to justify his act of charging interest as something which is not sinister, as something which is not a sin. But just as Jacob too, he was blessed with streaked and spotted lambs and ewenlings. Likewise, he too, Shylock too, he was blessed. So he is trying to, he was blessed, and he was not, and he had done all out of his hard-earned labor, and there was nothing wrong in it because he had not stolen it. Just as Jacob had not stolen it and had earned it, likewise, Shylock is trying to justify his act of charging interest as also something which he had not stolen. So that is exactly what he very cleverly tries to make reference and is trying to justify out here. So then, Antonio, this was a venture, sir, that Jacob served for a thing not in his power. So this was a matter of chance for which Jacob served. He served the Lord, and it was a thing which his power could not cause to happen. And in fact, it was but swayed and fashioned by the hands of heaven. It was something that it was controlled and influenced by the hands of God. It was beyond the control of Jacob. Was this inserted to make interest good? Or is your gold and silver ewes and rams? Are you trying to make reference to this biblical instance by, trying to justify your act of charging interest? Or do you think your gold and silver are ewes and rams? So he rebukes, he revolts. So Shylock, he says, I cannot tell, I make it breed as fast, but not me, Signor. I cannot say that, but I definitely do know that I can make my money increase as fast as ewes and rams. But hear me, sir, hear me, Signor. Antonio, mark you this, Bassanio, the devil can cite scriptures for his purpose. An evil soul producing holy witness here means holy argument, is like a villain with a smiling cheek, smiling face. So, a goodly apple rotten at the heart. Oh, what a goodly outside falsehood had. So, here he quickly Antonio turns towards Bassanio, and he says, he warns him, saying that, take note of this, and Bassanio, a devil, in order to meet his purpose, can also quote from Bible. And here, when Antonio says this, he is making reference to another biblical instance where the devil, he in order to meet his purpose, he reads a very powerful verse from the Bible, that is Psalm 91. So he could go to that extent. That is what he means. And out here, by referring to devil, he compares this devil to Shylock. So take note of this, Bassanio. The devil can quote from the Bible when he wants to make something happen for his own selfish interest. So selfish need. A bad man, an evil soul producing holy witness. So a bad man producing holy argument is like a villain with a smiling face. So he meant to say that he is somebody who cannot be trusted at all. So, and such kind of people are no different from a goodly apple rotten at the heart. A goodly apple, a good looking apple, a juicy apple which looks very juicy in the exterior, which looks perfect from the exterior, but is completely rotten in the inside. Oh, what a goodly outside fashion falsehood had. Oh, what a fine outer appearance falsehood has. So falsehood, such kind of people are very, very deceptive. That is exactly what Antonio says out here. So 3,000 ducats, it is a good round sum. 3 months from 12. Then let me see the rate. So he again, but out here, Shylock, in a very calm manner, he does not react instantaneously. So instead of that, he carefully, in a very calm manner, he drifts the topic, and he refers to the amount that they had been discussing about, and that is 3,000 ducats for 3 months. So for this, so this is what we see out here. So for today, my dear children, I shall be ending this scene out here, and this scene since this scene is a little long, I shall be completing the rest of the scene in the next part. So this will be the first part of MOV Act 1 Scene 2, Act 1 Scene 3. So I hope you all understood, and please, I would still remind you to replay this video again and again, so that in case you don't understand, you could replay it. And in case if you feel that some places where you need to write notes, I would request you, it is a humble request for you all to take down those notes for your future reference, and which would make your study process very easy. So this much for today. Thank you very much.